We're slowly sifting our way through the Toa. As you can see, I've got 6 of them back there now, but as you know, in Generation 2, there are not 6, but 7 Toa, so I wanted to make this video about that 7th Toa, Ekimu, specifically, just to get it right out of the way. And if, of course, you like this content, be sure to subscribe. Let's talk about Ekimu and the choices I made when designing this character, because ultimately, I really like him. Now, these are all designed to be roughly master-sized. You know, obviously, some characters take a little bit of inspiration and freedom of their own, Liwa, for example, but generally here, this is something I could have seen LEGO having sold in stores for that $15 price range, or, you know, give them a bigger, chunkier weapon and maybe a side build and $20 is fine, whatever. Point being, though, there are some interesting choices, most notably here, his colors. I'm going to set him down for a moment so I can talk. The colors in general, sand blue is a choice. I really like it, and I wasn't sure I was going to. Obviously, he does have a handful of knockoff pieces on him because of the feet that we just saw there, but one of the reasons I chose sand blue is when you've got a character like Gali or Kopaka both carrying over the trans light blue. To have trans light blue be a primary color feels weird. It's also the only transparent color amongst the group that would be a primary, which also felt weird. Granted, yes, many of them in 2015 had transparent colors anyway, so didn't feel that out of the ordinary. Ultimately here, though, the sand blue really looks quite lovely. And I think one of the reasons I like it more than the trans light blue, outside of it being an opaque color, is that it doesn't try to take attention away from the gold. You know what I mean? Gold ends up being the primary color here, which is perfect. It's his color, right? None of the other characters from this series that I'm working on contain the color gold at all, because I wanted to keep it exclusive to a character like this, or a character like Takanuva if I wanted to build a version of Takanuva for G2. But the point still stands that this looks really, really wonderful. But he still carries over the gunmetal that all of the other characters have. It's a tie-in color that I'm using for this wave. So ultimately, he still has both, and both, I think, really help to offset the sand blue, which, while muted, has a really lovely presence to it that something like dark gray maybe wouldn't have. There are other colors that could have gone here. People mentioned sand green, of course. Sand green is a lot more limiting just because there's only one shell in that color. There are some feet pieces, but they're not the right feet pieces for this character specifically. Ultimately, sand blue was just the obvious choice here. I do want to mention very quickly, there are sand green bootlegs of these feet pieces here. Eventually in the future I'll get some. Point being, though, yeah, the character, I really like it. I think one of the things that really helps him stand out is the armor, especially the armor on the sides here, which is the same Chima armor as is on his shoulders, but it is introduced in a fairly interesting way to help cover up a bit more of the gunmetal that would otherwise take up his entire torso. And the way this is done is just using, yes, a bootleg piece. Unfortunately, LEGO does not make this piece. I hope they do at some point, but it is a Mixel joint socket, but on a Technic pin. It's a really lovely piece, and I actually grabbed that from this guy right who's becoming less and less of himself every day. But generally speaking, having those on here, everything else LEGO does make. So the Mixel ball joint, the bar, granted black here, I don't think LEGO makes it in black, but still, they do make the piece there in dark gray. There is one of those like Mixel clip bar acceptor pieces. I'm not going to take that apart to showcase that, but I will try to throw this guy together to the best of my ability for the Discord, so you'll be able to find that there, link in the description. And of course, be sure to follow along with the progress on all 7 of these guys now, both on Discord and Instagram. Again, link in the description for those. So, of course, I wanted to rely on a cool print, and what print is cooler than the gold and gunmetal print? I do not remember which character that is from Hero Factory, but it's still just a really lovely, lovely piece. And so, yeah, I'm very happy to incorporate that here. Adds that printing in. It looks really aesthetically wonderful. And even to tie in a little bit of his original color, the trans light blue there. In this case, again, a bootleg from the same set that the feet come from the same brand that those socket pieces come from. Ultimately, a lot of stuff reliant on those. But this is actually a really cool one, too, because it glows in the dark, and he's a character of light. It's sort of a heart light thing. It's not something I usually do, but might as well throw it in here. You could absolutely leave that empty, or even maybe add your own chest piece there, or build up something custom. That's fine. But I really just think that simplicity was the option here. And that's kind of true in a lot of cases. There's a lot of things on him that are overall fairly smooth, overall fairly simple, but just go together to make a wonderful looking figure without it just being like, oh, it's overly detailed, it doesn't look right against the rest of the team. Like, ultimately, this is a really phenomenal look, in my opinion. One of the things that I think helps also make him feel unique, too, is the little wrist spikes. None of the other characters, of course, have that. Of course, it ties in more gold to the lower arms, which helps to bring that color in more places here. And then adding in those Exoforce arms and the little claw pieces there just helps tie in even more color. It feels like there's more layers. It feels more technically advanced when it's not at all. And it just looks really, really wonderful. So I'm super happy with this character. But of course, if I'm using gunmetal on him, why not go ahead and take another knockoff from the collection and give him the gunmetal version of the Mask of Creation? Because why not? I have it, right? And in this case here, it is a runeless version of the mask, which I actually really like. But generally, it just looks so lovely on this character, especially with those eyes. They just kind of scream out at you there. So I really do quite enjoy this version of him. You could see it as being corrupted, or you could see it as whatever you want. Maybe that is his original mask. Who knows? Maybe it's unpowered, whatever the case may be. And then, of course, his protector mask as well, which does actually look pretty good. Again, tying in a little bit more of the trans blue against the torso there. Ultimately, I think all of these look absolutely wonderful. But I do think, of course, the best here is still the gold version of the mask. Really big fan of this. I wanted to go on a very quick side tangent, though, because you may have noticed something on his back that shouldn't be there. And by shouldn't, I mean there's normally a printing on this piece. That is because that is a 6-length CCBS shell in sand blue, and this is where the tangent starts to come in, where I start to complain about CCBS a little bit. Your bonus video. No. What bothers me about CCBS, one of the things that bothers me about CCBS, is color support, specifically when it comes to CCBS shells that are locked behind prints. What I mean by this is sand blue. There are 3 shell pieces that appear in sand blue and 1 armor add-on piece that appear in sand blue. And of those 4 total pieces, only 1 appears without printing on it at all. It is the sand blue 5-length shell here. Thankfully, I have more than enough of them to make this character, but something like the 6-length shell is locked behind a print that only exists with printing on it. The 4-length shell only exists with printing on it. This version that comes in sand blue as well only exists with printing on it. This one in Key Torch, printing. Like, why? Okay, here's the thing. I get it. You're going to introduce them with printing for specific characters, but why not throw them in elsewhere? And here's where my proposition would have been. I think many people have probably thought of this before me, but ultimately back in the 90s, back in the 2000s, even into the late 2000s, Lego used to ship out these catalogs for Lego members that would showcase like the different sets they were selling that year, right? So usually this would come like twice a year in like June and December or something like that. And I remember looking through these catalogs all the time, and without fail, with very few exceptions, in the catalog you'd find these little bulk packs. I don't know what to call them, parts packs, I guess, right? Oftentimes these were Technic parts or Technic bricks, but you could buy them like in bulk. You'd have something that's like, oh, here's a Technic lift arm pack, or a Technic axle pack, or a Technic pin pack, gears, etc., right? This was always a lovely thing to have because it meant if you wanted to sort of bulk up your parts catalog, right, you could very easily. Now, oftentimes they were, just neutral colors, which is perfectly fine. It's a good place to start when you're wanting to build your own sets. But now, we live in an age where the internet is everywhere. Why not have a service like this on the internet? And you might be saying, well, what about Pick-a-Brick? And yes, Pick-a-Brick definitely exists. It is an option, but I don't think it should be the only option for one particular reason, notably that Pick-a-Brick sifting through it, it's difficult. Not for any, mechanical reasons, searching or whatever, but I mean just the sheer amount of stuff. It's like when you go to a restaurant and you've got a menu that's this long with 150 items on it. How the hell do you choose what you want in an ample amount of time, right? You might have went there with an idea, but by the time you come out, you might have forgot that idea entirely and been like, oh man, I forgot. I meant to get the rolls or whatever. But ultimately here, I think that's one of the main problems I run into with something like Pick-a-Brick. Obviously also paying per part is fine, but some parts are a little bit expensive. Some parts feel egregious. So, having something where it's just like, oh, here's these parts, especially if it would have been something like this, where it only comes in sets printed, but maybe you can get it unprinted through this service, whatever, right? Here are these parts, and you can buy them in bulk, and you just pick a color. That would be fun, right? Or you could buy just an assortment, and so you get a bunch of colors. Anyway, I think you understand kind of what I'm getting at here generally. I don't want to dwell on it for too long, but ultimately, I think that would have been a really cool service. Whether or not it would have been profitable for Lego, I don't know. I mean, they're a massive company. The company is profitable. I think they could absolutely invest in endeavors that aren't solely for the sake of making money first, even if it's just here or there, as a service for fans, for you know, people who buy your product, right? To facilitate your product. Just like how companies will sell milk below cost or eggs or whatever below cost to get you into the store, right? Lego having something like that as a service would have been really cool. But obviously CCBS long past that time at this point. So that's pretty much it for the video. We still have to take a look at Pohatu, Tahu, and Onua. Probably going to be doing those in their own videos. We will see how that goes, however. And of course, again, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe once again. If you are curious about the bootleg parts on the set, I did do a review specifically on both sets from the Zygao brand, or I don't really care how it's pronounced, Zygao brand. And those are where all of the bootlegs from the set come in, with the exception of this mask, which I actually purchased a handful, probably like last year, from Zion Tyros on their little website. I did link that in the description of the last video. I'll try and link it in the description of this video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Let me know your thoughts on so far which of your favorite revamps I've done, or what's your favorite revamp you've seen or you've made, and be sure to check out the Discord where you can actually post your answers, or you can post your pictures and share. Got a lovely little community over there, but let me know down in the comments your favorites too. And also, I am curious which your favorite master is out of the box from 2015. I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.